Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another video. And today we'll be talking about gaming. Recently in a video, I discussed the current state of Star Wars games, and I stated that although it's not currently the golden era of Star Wars gaming, there's certainly been worse. And with projects like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the inevitable sequel that comes from that, and the other games rumored to be worked on, I think the future for console and PC gaming is actually pretty bright. That being said, mobile gaming is a completely different story, and the mobile game industry as a whole is really hit or miss. The vast majority of mobile games are cash grabs. And I'm not saying this to be a boomer anti-video game guy. I actually love games, and I love mobile games specifically when done right, but generally they represent the most anti-consumer aspects of more expensive, fully fledged games, and that is because many mobile games are free, they don't come with the $60 price tag, so instead features are purposefully limited, put behind a paywall, etc. There are lots of YouTubers who can speak about this better than I can. One that I really like is Jim Sterling, and he often brings up the fact that mobile game creators and just video game creators generally often now create problems for the player, and that would be things like energy in mobile game systems, simply so there's another way to monetize the experience. And with the way mobile gaming currently is, many of these games are as profitable as console or PC games, but as a consumer, paying a comparable amount of money, i.e. $60 or $70 in microtransactions and fees, gets you a far lesser and still more restricted experience. That being said, there are good mobile games. I personally quite like Clash Royale, for example. There are microtransactions, but it's reasonable. You can still play the game and do so competitively without picking up your credit card. And if you do decide to pay, you get a good amount of content and entertainment for a reasonable price, which I think is probably where a lot of people land. Then there's also paid games, which are actually my favorite type of mobile game, especially if you can pay once and get the entire experience. A great example of this would be something like, say, Stardew Valley, puzzle games like Mini Metro, or ports including, as I mentioned, Stardew Valley or the Grand Theft Auto games. I think you guys get the idea. Unfortunately, the current state of Star Wars gaming almost completely emphasizes the negative aspects of monetization and feature-limited games. So we'll talk about that today, and the whole genesis of this discussion is the announced closing of the Star Wars Commander mobile game, and we'll get to that eventually, but let's look at other players in the area. First off, we have Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and although I will admit I played this game for a time, and I do understand that there are people who like it, in my opinion, this is one of the most nefarious mobile games not only in the Star Wars market, but in video gaming generally. And this isn't meant to be a slight against anyone who plays the game, and I'm actually pretty good friends with many of the Star Wars Galaxy of Hero content creators, like Mobile Gamer and Arnold T101. So the game is essentially about collecting, upgrading, and battling heroes, which is a pretty cool premise. There are Jedi, clones, Legends characters like Revan, Sith, new canon characters, etc. And you can collect, there must be over 100 by now. You bring these characters into battle, you can use that to unlock new characters, and there are various raid and story mechanics. However, the real nefarious thing here is the fact that the game clearly targets high-spending players, and if you don't spend money, it's almost impossible to progress. It can cost, and I'm not exaggerating, literally thousands of dollars to unlock a new character. And once unlocked to be competitively viable, you have to upgrade them with very hard to find equipment. There are players that have probably spent 6 figures in this game just to maintain their current meta status. Now that is obviously very rare, but my point is the game is essentially about collecting characters, and to have any sort of fun and to remain, competitive, you have to spend money. And in my opinion, the gameplay is really substandard. It's essentially a battle system with each character having a standard move and 2 or 3 special moves, and that's basically it. When I first started playing, I asked myself really whether this was a game or just collecting digital figures and paying money to do so, and that alone led me to stop. However, that doesn't make me better or anything than people who are still playing, and that's what's so nefarious about these games. They specifically work with psychological tools to make players addicted, to keep them spending, to keep them playing, and to get every bit of money they can out of players. Because not only do you have to buy these shards and pieces for characters, but you also have to use energy, credits to upgrade individual specs, and just every way they can nickel and dime you is included. And if you look on the subreddit, it seems there's always a new level of armor that needs to be upgraded to be viable, or a new mechanic that's being introduced, or new crazy requirements to even participate in the most recent events that just lead people to spending. However, Galaxy of Heroes is not alone in being shitty as a Star Wars mobile game. I will briefly mention Star Wars Commander, but not to the degree of Galaxy of Heroes because I didn't play it and I don't want to crap on a game that I don't personally have experience with. However, it does seem to be basically the Clash of Clans style game, heavy reliance on energy and crystals again, monetization rammed down the goddamn thing's throat, and of course we can see the problem with these always online digital games, and that is they can just shut it down and all the purchases, all the things you've achieved are, well, out the window. That being said, I have heard people say that if you played every day and you were really consistent about the game, you could progress without spending much or perhaps any money, but I think that should be the base expectation for something. And although I know a lot of people hate this game, I wish we'd see more Fortnite style monetization, where you'd pay for skins and perhaps a little extra flair for the game, and then the actual gameplay mechanics could flourish otherwise. Because regardless of how many people had fun with this game, and I will say I have heard more negative experiences than positive by far, there's no question that the gameplay and experiences is severely being limited because of microtransactions. However, it's far from the first Star Wars game to be cancelled, and there was actually one that I thought was great, Star Wars Force Arena. Basically, it was a PvP game, sort of like Clash Royale, with monetization that was certainly still present, but less totally restricting. The gameplay was fun, they were always introducing new content. It was actually the subject of the first videos on this channel before I started doing Star Wars lore stuff. There was a couple of months of just Force Arena content. However, it was closed. And the reason for this is pretty obvious. I've spoken to other YouTubers in the niche, and just based on my own experiences, it was almost completely non-supported by Lucasfilm and Disney. This was a cool game. It had very, very solid mechanics. It was frequently balanced and updated. It had cool heroes, like even a version of the concept art for Luke Skywalker brought to life, and it was competitively viable. It could have been an esport or at least something streamed that people would have watched. It had one of my favorite content creators on YouTube, Gluten Slayer, putting out weekly videos, but just no promotion. I never saw the game advertised, even on things like the Star Wars show. I was actually supposed to do a promotion for the game, which I would have done at a reduced rate, but they just decided not to. And the game ended up dying a relatively slow death, with the servers eventually just being shut off. And that was a sad day for me, because although I stopped making Force Arena content, I continued to play casually. I don't know how they messed up a Star Wars MOBA, but come on. And to be completely honest, the future's not looking very bright. We've got Star Wars Rise to Power coming out, but it's basically going to be another BS Clash of Clans type of thing. I've seen some of it, and it's basically one of those things where certain actions, like upgrading one of your buildings, will take, and I'm not exaggerating here, literally a month of real game time if you don't upgrade it with crystals. Now I get that some people enjoy that experience, I'm not denigrating you in any sort of way, but the degree to which monetization is interrupting game mechanics is just ridiculous. To be honest though, I'm not even sure if that game is going to come out anymore because I think development has gone kind of silent. Other negative experiences include the closing or the ending of Star Wars Uprising. Again, not really a game that I played, I can't speak to it, but I did hear some good things from people who did, and I know it reintroduced some Legends elements back into Star Wars canon, but that game's been closed now for some time. So to summarize, there's been a lot of BS. Good Star Wars games haven't really been supported in favor of ones that make a lot more money, but seem to represent the very worst aspects of mobile gaming generally. Plus, if I'm being honest with you guys, I still am a little mad that they took Tiny Death Star off the Play Store. That being said, even with all that negativity, there are a few bright spots. I do think the upcoming Lego MOBA style game will be pretty fun. I've tried the beta and was pretty impressed. Not a game changer, probably not even as good as Force Arena, but something to keep your eyes on if you like competitive mobile gaming. But an even brighter spot would be the great success of the mobile port for Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. KOTOR is one of the most well-loved and simply best Star Wars games ever, and it received a port to Android and iOS. Now, I've played through the entire game on my, at the time, Samsung Galaxy S6, and it was a dream. It adapted super well to touch controls, there was no extra monetization, and it was just a joy to play, and a great experience otherwise. Now, this isn't really representative of what could normally happen with mobile games, because for one, KOTOR was already developed, they didn't need to recoup costs in that way. It wasn't a sort of ongoing experience, so monetization wasn't needed to justify continual server use or anything like that. But I do think that shows the potential of games with a high barrier to entry. I think games at the $20, maybe even $30 mark for mobile could really succeed. I mean, I don't know if there's any hard numbers, but KOTOR is always near the top charts for paid apps, and I think there's a potential for more like that in the future. I mean, even KOTOR 2 would be a great next step, but I think the real moneymakers will always be the sort of constantly monetized, barely games that we're seeing now, like Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, so a pretty dreadful state for the gaming industry in my opinion. What's my dream Star Wars game? Well, it's never going to happen, but I actually want to, and this is something I'm seriously considering, get a team together to make a sort of Empire at War light. Obviously, if I made it and wanted to sell it, it wouldn't be Star Wars branded, but I want to make a super accessible but also deep strategy game, very simple graphics that can be played on mobile and which would have limited in-app purchases, but probably would cost something outright. I think a good example of what I'm looking for is something like Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. Each ship would have, its own abilities, it would launch fighters, it would have lots of stats like ranges and weapon types, etc. And it would all just be presented very cleanly, but also, like I said, with a real depth to it. This is actually one of the goals for my second channel. If it does get large enough, I am seriously planning on funding something like this. Charlie, who's the co-host on that channel, has a lot of experience making games. So does Corey, who's basically adjacent to the channel and will probably join sometime in the future. We would pick up new people, and I don't know, I think that part of the market is really underserved, especially in the mobile game niche. But that's way off topic. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think of the state of video games, mobile games, and specifically Star Wars mobile games down in the comment. I look forward to reading them. I will be right after the video goes live. Make sure as well, if you want to see me play video games, that you check out my second channel, youtube.com/x2. But that's all I have for you guys now. Have a great one, and may the Force be with you.